All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It's 12:01. So people are still joining, but I'll get started with a few housekeeping items, and we'll dive into the content today here in just a minute or two, once a few more people have had a chance to join us. But thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for joining us over your lunch hour for this virtual learning series on the dynamics of donor development. My name is Carly Houchin. I work at the Sunflower Foundation as the Director of Health Systems, and we just so appreciate you taking the time to learn alongside us for what I think is a really engaging and interesting topic of donor development. So again, just to give people a few more minutes to join us, thought I'd start by telling you just a little bit about the Sunflower Foundation, or maybe telling you again, as I see many familiar face and lots of friends on the call today. But the Sunflower Foundation was established in the year 2000. We're a statewide health philanthropy, so we serve all 105 Kansas counties. And our mission is to serve as a catalyst to improve the health of all Kansans. We've been doing grant making to support the Kansas nonprofit sector, as well as what we often call support beyond the grant check. So learning collaboratives, technical assistance, virtual learning experiences like we have here today. We've been doing this work alongside the Kansas nonprofit sector for over 20 years. And that's really because we believe that thriving nonprofit organizations often serve as the backbone of a healthy Kansas community. So we view the work that we do at the Sunflower Foundation and the important work that you all lead in your communities every day as intrinsically connected, and we're really grateful to consider you partners and friends. So just wanted to tell you a little bit about the context in which we bring this virtual learning series to you and share a few resources in case you're interested. Last year we put together one of these virtual learning series around nonprofit board development. And that was frankly a really fun series to put together and had great conversation with our partners. So we wanted to do it again, and that's what we're here to do today. We did record the board development sessions last year, and so when I'm done speaking, I'll drop the link to those recordings in the chat in case that is information that you're interested to circle back to or engage with for the first time. So we knew we wanted to put together another virtual learning series, and really the topic was an easy one to land on. So the picture on the right is a panel discussion that we had at an in-person learning collaborative at the Sunflower Nonprofit Center last May. The panel discussion was on donor development. And I know I left that conversation really hungry to learn more and thinking that we probably needed to spend some time getting into the weeds to really figure out what this work is. What are the templates and tools and tricks of the trade to make this as accessible as possible? Really recognizing that, man, Kansas nonprofits have their plates, their hands full and beyond full. So we're really excited to be able to put this series together, starting today, but continuing. So the topic that we'll be starting off with here in just a few minutes is around creating a culture of philanthropy. If you come back next week, the topic will be on crafting your case for support. And then in the subsequent weeks, up through the end of April, scattering them out to, dodge spring breaks and other meetings and things like that. We'll be talking about donor advised funds. We'll be talking about kind of demystifying discovery conversations, exploring corporate development, and then talking through prospect research for small shops as well. Now, you will have to register for each of these sessions individually. So again, whenever I stop speaking here, I'll drop a link in the chat that will take you to a page where you can click through to register for each of those sessions. If you're not available at the time of a given presentation, no sweat if it's a topic in which you are interested. If you go ahead and register for the session, we are recording today, and we plan to record each of these sessions and will distribute them along with supporting materials to everyone who attends, but also everyone who registers. So if you miss a session, we hope we can help you catch back up. And if you listen to a session and you know that another member of your team or a board member or something like that would benefit from the series, you'll have the recording and links to the materials to share with your partners. So that's about enough for me. I wanted to first, though, introduce our presenters both today, and they'll be leading the session between now and the end of April. So we have Brad, Cecil, and Associates joining us. BCA is how I'll likely refer to them, was established in 1998 with the goal of supporting organizations in their fundraising, communication, and organizational development work. They have a highly skilled staff that we've had the privilege of working with and learning from the past couple of years, and we've just greatly appreciated their knowledge and expertise and felt like the right voice to bring this exciting content to you today. So without further ado, the BCA, a senior vice president and president, respectively, I will turn it over to Vickie Mathews and Brad Cecil to get us started. Vickie, over to you. I'll let you share slides.
Thank you, Carly. And thank you all for joining us today. Brad and I have really been looking forward to this conversation and excited to dig into all of these topics over the next several weeks. I wanted to tell you just a little bit about our agency. Brad and I will give quick intros today, but then that's the last time you'll hear that. If you stay with us along this journey, you don't need to keep hearing us talk about ourselves every session. But we are with Brad Cecil and Associates, which is a full-service fundraising agency. It's located in Arlington, Texas, but serves nonprofit organizations across the country. We provide donor solutions from $5 up to $5 million and everywhere in between. And we've had the pleasure of doing this work since 1998. So Brad founded this company almost 30 years ago, and it is our extreme pleasure to get to support organizations just like all of you every single day. As Carly mentioned, my name is Vickie Mathews. I'm a senior vice president at BCA. I have been working alongside Brad at this agency for 11 years and oversee all of our major gift work, as well as the training and coaching that nonprofit organizations need, just like this, along the way. Before I came to BCA, I spent a little bit of time at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force as the director of marketing. So if you're interested in digging into World War II aviation history, I've got some stories for you. And then before that, I was on a two-person team that was tasked with raising the private funds that were needed to build the Flight 93 National Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. That's where my career got started. That's where I got a bug for major gifts and capital campaigns, because there's a little bit of everything involved in those projects. And so it has just been such a pleasure to have found that an opportunity to continue that very dynamic work here at BCA. I work alongside Brad every day as the founder of our agency, so I'm going to turn it over to him to give you an intro and then get us started.
Yeah, thank you, Vickie. Thank you, Carly, as well. It's quite an honor to be with you today. My career started right after college. I was recruited to a nonprofit in upstate New York, working with the International Youth Organization. I worked up in New York for 10 years and then was transferred to Florida to help them build a new campus down in Florida. And it was the first time I had gotten involved with a capital campaign and raising significant resources to build that campus. When that project was completed, I came out to Dallas, Fort Worth area to go to graduate school, and I've been here ever since. Had the privilege of being the CEO of a nonprofit in town when I was in school, working with homeless youth. And so I did quite a bit of fundraising all along my journey. But when I was here in town, it really started to grow. Several of my friends asked for help. Could you help us with similar marketing communication and donor development and some coaching? And so I did that on the side while I was working at this nonprofit. One thing led to another, and now we're doing it full time. I've been doing this since 1998. We have a wonderful staff here in Arlington, over 30 full-time professionals. And as Vickie mentioned, we do everything from help you acquire a new donor at the $5 level to help you cultivate and solicit a $5 million, even a $50 million gift. These are the type of things that we work on all the time. And so we have quite a diverse team and very, very proud of the partners in our agency. But today we're going to start talking about how to help you develop this culture of philanthropy for your office, for your organization. And then we're going to get into some more specifics. So in the start, we want to go over the real basics of this. And I think it will be somewhat redundant for some of you that have experience in this. But bear with us because it's really important to go over it and good reminders, again, of what this is all about. Let me go ahead and start our presentation today. If I can, there we go. Most of you are probably aware of this, but I love this field because when I was in graduate school studying Greek, I realized the origin of several words. I loved it when I learned the word of philos or phileo or love, what that meant. And you see that word attached to several things. Philos and Adelphos is Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Philos and Sophia, or wisdom, is the love of wisdom. And this one really caught me, and it's caught me ever since. I got the bug early on. It's Philos and Anthropos, or the love of mankind. And I want to remind all of us that what we're really about is showing our love for others. That's really what philanthropy is all about. It's not really about money at all. It's about showing our love for humanity and for the work that we're doing. And all of us have an expression of that. And that's a serious comment to make because of the fact sometimes we get bogged down in the numbers that we have to raise as philanthropists. We get bogged down in the goals that we've set. We get bogged down in budgets and all these type of things. And we're just looking for little techniques. But I want to remind us all from the start that really what this is about is love. It's just demonstrating love to one another and doing so in such a way that it inspires others to action. And that's what we feel our job is. Our job as an agency, we exist to inspire people to action. That's what we really do. That's the bottom line. The next thing I want to show you, though, is just some of the basics from our giving in the United States. Those of you that get the Giving USA report every year, you'll realize this real quick. A lot of people assume that giving comes from large foundations, maybe a large corporate gift. But the reality is the majority of giving comes from individuals. And so if you're going to be in the work of philanthropy, you cannot be misanthropic. You have to be someone who loves people. If you don't love people, this is probably not the work for you. Because it's not just writing a great grant. It really is about understanding people, listening to them, understanding their motivations, understanding what drives them, what they're looking for in life, what they want to accomplish, all of those type of things. Because all of this applies. It applies for individuals, foundations, corporations, and at the end, for the bequest. So the bequest is really there for the person who has been so inspired by your work that they want to make sure that it continues on, and they're going to leave you their resources to do so. We'll get into the details of how to go about raising money from the individuals, how to raise money from foundations and for corporations and bequests. We'll get into all those details as we go. But this is just a good reminder from the start that the majority of donated income is going to come from individuals. The next slide I want to show you, though, is where it goes. Now, 23% of all giving goes to religion, That's never well, it's changed a little bit. It's declined a little bit, and I'll explain that as we go along. 14% goes to human service, 14% goes to education, and then gifts to grant making foundations. Those are the big pieces of philanthropy. Religion, of course, is the most as people give to their local church. You probably will realize that giving to their local church is it's a time tested, consistent way of giving to impact your world. The interesting part about that, though, is that oftentimes the local church, well, if you're as old as I am, you've been around enough to know that if you gave to your church, you're also giving to cause impact in human service and education and healthcare. Those things kind of broke away from the church. And so now we give directly to those organizations. So you could call it a parachurch organization. You could just call it a separate 501c3. But if you look at the roots of even that language, 501c3, it's written as if it was a religious organization doing something in your community. Now, again, a lot of us have been a part of organizations that are far removed from the church, but a lot of it still is stimulated by the origins of this philanthropic effort in the original times. But keep that in mind too. Human service has grown significantly the past couple of years, primarily because of COVID, and primarily because of some of the experience that people have recently with the government shutdown, SNAP benefits being pulled back, healthcare benefits being pulled back. Those type of things have caused people to give directly to organizations that were impacting that. So that is a consistent. As I said, this chart hasn't changed that much over the years. The two charts that I just showed you. I want to talk about this culture of philanthropy, though, because this is a really important part. Philanthropy in the work of an organization, and I know some of you are burdened by this, because what happens is when an organization does their budgets, they often do this. And this used to drive me absolutely crazy. It still does to this day. But when I was on that side, when I was working inside the organization, they would just say, this is our budget. We can't see how to make ends meet. So I'm going to tell our fundraisers, just go raise the difference. Just go out there and raise the difference. And so you're given a number that's kind of arbitrary. You're not given a method for doing it. You're just saying, we need to raise this much money. It's almost treating it like fishing. In other words, if you want to catch more fish, just throw your line into the water some more and change your lure, or get a new setup, or go fish in a new location. And that's really not philanthropy at all. Philanthropy is a skillful act of planning and cultivating these relationships. So again, keep in mind, I know it's burdensome at times, but we want to lift that burden for you today. We don't want you to walk away from this saying, oh gosh, it's more of the same. I need tools. I just need to, learn how to raise money from a donor advised fund. I don't need all of this. Well, the reality is we do. We need to remind ourselves often that what we're really about is our mission. What are we there to do? What are we trying to change in this world? My mentor, a person I consider my mentor, Jerry Panis, told me a long time ago, face to face, Brad, people give for only two reasons. They want to change a life or save a life. They don't want to do much more than that. And it caught me because I thought to myself, I want to make this so complicated, but it really stays very simple. People want to help other people, or they want to help other things in the world that need changing. Sometimes it's an animal, for example, but sometimes it's healthcare. But the point is, they care about making a difference where it really matters. And that's what I want you to remember. Stay mission first, always. And then keep it relationship focused. The one thing that probably has caused more fundraisers to fail at becoming a fundraiser is the fact that they focus on the money and not on the people. I'm going to say that again. They focus on the dollars and not the donor. This is a really important part. I always say that the greatest skill set you can have as a fundraiser is a skill set of listening. listening and understanding who the donor is, what they want to accomplish, and what resources they want to commit to that. That's the real art here. It's not about treating them as an ATM. I know it always feels good when you get the notice, hey, I'm going to give you a $100,000 commitment. I want to pay that over 3 years or however it comes to you. You're going to rejoice with that, and you should. But I want you to even focus when they announce that to you, it's a celebration of them, not a celebration of hitting our goal. We're celebrating the donor who's made it. In recent days, there's been some negative talks about donors, that donors are not very nice people, that they all have ulterior motives, and I don't share in that belief. I share in the belief that donors are wonderful people, want to become partners with you, and they're looking for opportunities that inspire them. Now, going to your organization again, this has to be a shared responsibility. It can't be only the fundraisers who do this, though. It has to be everybody on the team. Part of your goal would be to train everybody in your team how to talk about your mission. If it were me, one of the first things I would say to every one of you on this session today, develop your case for support and turn that into an elevator speech and make sure everybody in your team knows it. It's not that hard. You can tell people this is what we do and how we do it. And even in some cases, it has to be done in a way that makes sense. For example, when I first started working, one of my friends who asked me for help was the North Texas Food Bank in Dallas. And they came to me and said, what do you think of our newsletter? And I said, well, your newsletter is really not inspiring at all. In fact, I told the director at the time, she's a good friend of mine, I said, it's really bad. She said, well, tell us how you really think. I said, well, you're talking about yourselves. You're talking about trucks and pounds of food, and you're talking about computers and birthdays. And those aren't the things that matter. What matters is, what are you doing in the life of people in our community? And she said back to me, well, that's a little bit hard to track down. I said, well, track it down, because you have to get those stories and share those with people, because the rest of it is not even meaningful to us. In fact, I told her, I don't even know how you describe a pound of food, to people. What is a pound of food? Is that one meal? Is that two meals? I know what a quarter pounder is, but how do you justify this? And I told her right away, why don't we change the language from providing pounds of food to providing meals? And that little simple change changed so much for them, because people could understand what a meal is, right? They could understand how to describe this and inspire people by providing meals. And so that language happened early on, and their newsletter transformed. In fact, after a while, people were asking them, where in the world are you making up these stories? And then she would say, no, those are real people. They're out there. This is what we're encountering every single day, and we want our donors to know about it. And then on top of it, the other thing that I always believe in is making sure you do the stewardship properly, or you communicate your gratitude to the donor. I've heard numerous times from so many donors that say, we don't need to be thanked. That's not why we're doing it. But I always say back, no, that's not true. It's just not true. People want to be appreciated. They feel respected when they're appreciated. And don't listen to those comments when people say to you, I don't need this. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs to understand that they are making a difference in people's lives. And so I thank people all the time. It's one of the first things I always do. In fact, yesterday, I was in a meeting with a major donor. We were talking about a $100,000 gift. And I stopped them and I said, you know what? I just want to thank you. I want to thank you because the people who are benefiting from your gift won't be able to thank you. So on their behalf, I want to say thank you so that you know. And in that moment, when I said those words, they told me the same thing. I don't need to be thanked. But when I said those words to them, I could tell what was happening. They both got choked up. And they got choked up because we're all humans. We all understand this process. We are sacrificially giving to make somebody else's life better. But the people whose lives are going to be better are not going to be able to thank them. So on behalf of those people, as philanthropists, we should be doing that. We should be thanking people constantly for this, and do it in a meaningful way, not just share the words thank you. It's telling them the importance of their commitment to this organization and to this work. Let me keep going on this. Thank you. Here's some misconceptions that we've encountered. Um, if you're a volunteer or your volunteers in your organization may say, hey, listen, that's not my job. My job is not to raise money. I feel uncomfortable doing that. The executive director needs to do that. Nobody else needs to even worry about it. Not true. Everybody needs to worry about it and think about it. Our board members aren't comfortable asking. Understand that. It's sometimes difficult to get you to the position of saying, it's really important for all of us to understand what we're doing here, and even what your board members are committing to do. So many times we get ourselves in the way. Now, I'm going to say that again. Going back to my mentor, he told me one time, Brad, I see your biggest problem is that you are getting in the way of what the donor wants to accomplish. And he was right on this. Because I was a nonprofit guy, my first job out of college, I shouldn't even probably talk about this, but I was making $15,000 a year. I was making less. I made more in college than I made after my first job, my first nonprofit. And I'm sure some of you can tell stories like that too. But I couldn't conceive of a person giving $100,000 away. I just could not conceive of that. And so early in my career, I was getting in the way constantly because I was too afraid to ask for what the donor wanted to do. I was only willing to ask for what I wanted to do. And I had to get away from this. I had to get away from me being the problem here and start thinking about them and how I can communicate them and inspire them to do what they want to do. Some of the organizations that may be on this session are also talking about, hey, we're a small shop. We don't need this. And the reality is, no, even if you're a small shop, we do need to think through this. And even if your budget's only $100,000, you still need to really think through how do we inspire that giving to people. And if you can go back on the, oops, sorry. Everyone already knows that we need money. This is another concept that that really causes me some concern. People call me up and say, I have a nonprofit organization. I need some help raising funds. And I say to them, just because you are a nonprofit organization doesn't mean that people are going to give you money. I know a lot of people really assume that if I just get my 501c3 from the IRS, therefore people will give me money. The reality is they don't give you money because of that. They're looking for your mission. What are you trying to do in this world? And what do you want to accomplish? And then the other one that we hear a lot is if we can just get our story told, if people will just be willing to tell our story. In other words, I've heard this numerous times, and you may even be saying it now, we're the best kept secret in town. Well, everybody feels this way. And it's difficult to overcome that if you really do feel that way. What I'd like to do is to encourage people to have their whole team, everyone on staff, all their volunteers, all their board, everybody understand this case for support. And we'll get into the specifics of that in future sessions. And learn that elevator pitch. What is it that we're here to do? And how are we going to go about doing it? Those are the things that I think everybody should learn, and not make these excuses that we're just too small, no one knows us, we're the best kept secret. All of that's language in the past. We need to change that language into, we are going to transform the world, and we're going to do it in this way, and we have a plan, and we know why, and we're looking for people who want to join us. And that's really what your donors are. They're partners in this work. This is why it's really important. Then I'm going to turn this over to Vickie. Many of us feel like this really is a burden. I've been given a number. I've got to go out there and raise it. I don't know where to begin. Just please give me help in learning how to do some planning. And we're going to give you those tools. Those tools are there. It does concern me that sometimes leadership just looks at fundraising as a necessary evil. We have to do it. Go hire somebody to do it. I don't want to do it. I want them to do it. I want them to go out there. And you get hired thinking, well, I've got to act like a salesperson. I've got to show up at every meeting. and I got to close the deal. And the reality is that's really not what fundraising is about. Again, it starts with the process of listening, understanding, and then sharing what your mission is. It does have me concerned when I see this process done with the budgets. You just say, go raise 5% more, or go raise 10% more, or go raise 15% more. That never works. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a plan behind it, and we'll give you the tools for that as well. Um, the best fundraising offices that I've been a part of, they really do treat donors as partners. You're in this with us. You're one of us. You're one of the staff. It's not insiders versus outsiders. It is all of us working together. So it's not the pressure that drives you. It's the partnerships that drive you. Through this, you're going to develop some wonderful relationships. And this is what I really hope you take away from this, is that once you find people who are aligned with your mission, they really want to move heaven and earth to help you achieve your mission. And so, but you have to listen very carefully to them and understand what drives that. Oftentimes, it's something very personal to them or deeply personal to them, and they make a difference. And I'll share one story. We were doing a capital campaign here in town, and the family gave us a very significant gift. In fact, they gave a $10 million gift. And they did so because of their grandparents. Their grandparents lived on the border of Arkansas and Texas. And it was really a route for people that were looking for work, looking for jobs. And in the day, they used to tell people who were hopping the trains, this is back in the Great Depression, that if you need a meal, you could come here. And how they did that, they put an X on the front stoop of their house to let people know that we are a friendly house. We're going to show you philanthropy. We're going to love you. We're going to feed you and give you a place and help you on your way. And so they did. And so what that family did when they gave that enormous gift for this capital campaign, out of thankfulness for that family, we decided to put a big X in front of the organization. And today there's a beautiful sculpture in front of this campus for this organization to signify the meaning that their grandparents and their family has held for a long period of time about how they care about humanity, how they care about people, and how they care about one another. And that's what philanthropy really is. It's just demonstrating our love for one another. And with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Vickie, and she's going to carry on from here.
Thank you, Brad. So as we consider a culture of philanthropy where everyone is contributing to shared responsibilities, everyone in your organization, whether it's a volunteer or a staff member, everyone has a role to help to build deeper relationships between donors and the organization. That's what a culture of philanthropy is trying to do, and everyone has a role to play in this. From a leadership standpoint, leaders, including executive director, the board, they should be modeling and communicating the values of philanthropy. They should be supporting the organization itself. They should also be the ones who are communicating the impact that makes for the individuals and families that are being supported and served by the organization. Board members, first and foremost, should always be considered and be ready to step into the role of advocates for the organization. It is a common request of board members to help broaden the network for the organization. So opening up their personal and professional networks to connect them to the mission of the organization that they have chosen to give their time to as board members is part of this broader culture of philanthropy. From a staff perspective, staff of the organization should live in gratitude through daily interactions. So, staff play a really important role. They are the subject matter experts for what happens at the organization every single day. They are often also the very first ones who see the impact they're the first ones that will collect stories to be able to explain what donor dollars actually mean for the individuals that are being served by that organization. And so they have a very important role in expressing the gratitude for the role that everyone plays in this organization. And volunteers are actually representing what generosity looks like for the organization within the community. Oftentimes, we talk about volunteers as giving time, talent, and treasure. They're modeling that behavior for the community. So everyone has a role to play in a culture of philanthropy. Now, there are many ways to actually support this culture that we're talking about, and most of them require no asking at all. Brad and I spend so much time coaching and training individuals who are scared, quite frankly, of the fundraising process. Now, if you're on this call today, you're a fundraiser in one way or another, and you are not afraid of that process. But we are all looking for ways to bring people in to support the fundraising process, even if they aren't directly asking. Only a small number of people need to be the askers. That should be a professional fundraiser, an executive director. There are many other ways that you can lean on others to support you and support the pipeline. There are a few examples here, and as we go through this list, I would encourage you to think about who in your organization fits each of these descriptions. You will find that volunteers fit into many of these categories. Board members fit into many of these categories. You can use this as a launching point to kind of create a menu of opportunities where you can show people that are associated with your organization all the ways that they can help you as a fundraiser without actually asking. The first is an ambassador. Everybody can be an ambassador. It's someone who builds awareness and invites others to learn about the mission. Examples include sharing social media posts, inviting people to attend events, or making introductions. Now, storytelling is such a fun activity, and often it starts with your program staff. As I mentioned earlier, they're the first ones to see what's actually happening on the ground with your organization and how your mission is impacting lives. Program staff are the ones that we would rely on to collect stories. Your executive director, development director is often the one who is sharing those stories first. But the beauty and the role of a storyteller is once you hear the story, you can become a storyteller. If you share the stories with your board, they become storytellers and they can share those impact stories with others to hopefully inspire them to get involved with your organization. Now, playing a part in stewardship is also something that many people in your organization can participate in. This is a way to make donors feel appreciated and help them understand what their dollars are actually doing in the everyday work of your organization. This is, handwritten thank you notes, making phone calls, taking photos, and just sending to a donor to say, here's what's going on this week. I thought you might be interested to see what's going on and the work that we're doing. And then there's a connector. How are you linking donors to these mission moments through tours and site visits or virtual briefings? That's one of our favorite activities to encourage organizations to do. And when you bring donors in for a tour, anyone can participate in that. Your staff can be part of it to share impact stories. Volunteers can be there to give that extra thank you that Brad was mentioning earlier. So there are many different ways to support a culture of philanthropy. Now, if any of you on this call today have been part of my presentation during previous sessions at Sunflower for fundraising fundamentals, this donor cultivation life cycle might look familiar to you. And Brad and I wanted to bring it back in to show you that there are all of these steps. There's 5 total steps in this donor cultivation cycle. The only one that has to live with staff is the solicitation. The point of establishing a culture of philanthropy is bringing more people into the process. It not only takes the burden off of the frontline fundraiser to have support for some tasks that just have to happen over and over and over again, but it also deepens the relationship with the donor. So if we were to go through this right now, you might consider in identification, you might be asking board members to help identify new donors. If it's a contact of theirs, they might also help you to qualify who you would like to continue a conversation with. You might bring in staff members for a tour as you're trying to cultivate that donor's gift. And then you might have a partner go with you as a peer to provide your own meaningful experience in supporting an organization when you're asking the donor to make a gift. And then in stewardship, having volunteers help you with thank you calls and thank you notes is one of the easiest things that you can work into your everyday process as you build a culture of philanthropy. So you see here that there's so many different ways that you can take the burden off of the frontline fundraiser and give all of these other touch points to build a more robust relationship with your donors so that their relationship is not just with you as the fundraiser. Their relationship is with the organization. And that's how you build long-term sustainable relationships. Now, as you think about where to begin to implement a culture of philanthropy, Brad and I would recommend that you start with just assessing your current culture at your organization and think about where are there areas for improvement and what are those very first things that you would like to implement in the first 30 days that are achievable and that you know you can execute to make progress towards a culture of philanthropy. We have some handouts that we've created to go along with our presentation today. The Sunflower Foundation will give you access to all of them, and then I think that Carly's going to start dropping them in to the chat. If you would like to download them immediately, you can. Now, we've created a template culture of philanthropy self-assessment that you can do with your board and with your staff. Everything that Brad and I create is really just meant to be a solid foundation for you to make better. So please consider every single one of these a template to get you started thinking, but we will always encourage you to consider how can this be further tailored for your organization. And it might not be our templates, but we hope that it gets you started in the right direction. Now, you're also going to want to make sure that you educate staff in collecting those stories that we talked about. This is something that our client service team here at BCA spends a ton of time doing. They're traveling across the country constantly going to collect those stories. And there's really maybe 5 or 6 pieces of information that they collect. Then it comes back to our agency and goes over to the copywriters who write a beautiful and inspiring story. And you can do the exact same thing. We have a story collection template that we've created as well that you can download and consider how you can train your staff to look for some of those stories that you might like to tell. Also, normalize donor visits so that it is not considered, oh, I can't talk to a donor if they're touring. You want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the role that they can and should be playing in expressing gratitude and sharing the impact of what a donor's contribution does for the organization. Once you've collected those stories, you want to make sure that you are telling them to everyone. Make sure that you're telling your board. Make sure you're putting it into donor communications. And integrate philanthropy into everything that you do. Make sure that it's part of your onboarding. Make sure that it's part of your communications. We're going to talk in our next session about creating a case for support that isn't just about we need money. It is about look at how we are changing the world and how we can continue to do that together. That's part of a culture of philanthropy. You'll also want to make sure that you celebrate not just the dollars that come in. Celebrate board participation. If your board shares social media posts, if your board does a thankathon, celebrate that. It's not just about dollars in. It's not about that ATM. It's about how are we all contributing as a team to strengthen relationships and make our organization stronger. Now, in this process, you're going to want to make sure to clarify roles and communicate responsibilities and provide tools. This is admittedly an area that you may feel falls to you as a frontline fundraiser, as an executive director, but think of it as an investment in the future. You are probably going to have to create a lot of the messaging, a lot of the tools. Someone has to be the central organizer of the messaging and the assignments that are made in a culture of philanthropy. But once you establish those processes, it will start to run on its own, and you will be able to step away from those things that you have to repeat over and over and suck your time in your day and give it to someone else so that you can be using your time where it makes the greatest impact. Now, here's a few examples that we wanted to bring to the conversation just to give you something to think about how you can implement it at your organization or change it so that it better fits you. Make sure if you're just starting out today in creating a culture of philanthropy, start small. Make sure that the things that you are taking on are sustainable and be consistent. Once you feel that you've mastered it, that's when you can add on some more things. We all aspire to thanking our donors within 48 hours. There are so many tools out there that can make that process easy and reliable. But there's also additional steps you can take and bring in volunteers. It can be just your regular volunteers. It can be your board who maybe write handwritten thank you notes or do a thankathon during your end of year fundraising push. I included in here a little snapshot of one of these thank you notes that I actually just received last week. Brad and I attended an event. It was a luncheon for an organization here in Dallas called the Stew Pot. I made a contribution during the event. And in addition to my automatic acknowledgement letter, I then a couple of weeks later received this handwritten thank you note from a volunteer. I guarantee you the executive director, the development director, the major gift officer, the event planner, none of those individuals had to ask anyone to do this because they had already set up the processes in place. And the volunteers who are engaged through the Stew Pot Alliance made sure that this happened. And they're building a relationship with me that doesn't exist with just one person. It is now with the organization itself. Quarterly impact reports are also really wonderful things to do. Once you have a template, anyone can send those out for you. Decide how many stewardship touch points you can maintain in a year. And those, again, if you have the right template to work from, are easy to pass over to someone else. Now, consider how internally, how you're also reinforcing a culture of philanthropy. I've included here a philanthropy moment. You might be more familiar with something like a mission moment that you bring into your board meeting. A philanthropy moment can be a mission moment, but it can also be a really wonderful story about why a donor has chosen to make a gift to the organization. And make sure that your leaders and your staff and your volunteers hear those stories of why someone has chosen to make a gift that they're not required to make. They don't owe us anything. They choose to make a contribution to any of your nonprofit organizations and share that joy with others in the organization to build momentum. And make sure that you schedule regular engagement opportunities. I mentioned tours earlier, bringing people into an organization. You can schedule those quarterly. You can do them monthly, depending on your capacity, but giving them an opportunity to come in and just learn about the organization. And you can ask staff to participate. You can ask volunteers to be there to, again, model the behavior of being generous with the organization. So now that we've talked about implementing a culture of philanthropy, I'm going to turn it back over to Brad, and he's going to talk a little bit about how you maintain the culture of philanthropy. Brad, you're muted still.
Sorry, I changed microphones. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, now this is a crucial piece of when we do our consulting for organizations. So these are some of the details that I really hope make sense as we go through them, because I find people really imbalanced in their approach. Um, for example, if you're an executive director, I often point out that 50% of your time is running the organization. 25% of your time goes to development, and then 25% to board management. This is really crucial because if you don't give either one of them enough time, they can easily fall apart. So, or it can drive you crazy trying to maintain all that's going on. And so at some point, you have to say no to some distractions and you have to prioritize what it's going to be. Um, for a development professional, if that's all you're doing is developing relationships with donors, and then 100% of your time is spent in that process, you still need time for administration. And so really think through this as to, for example, I always recommend for every major gift officer that they take their Fridays and spend time making sure their schedule is together for next week. So on Fridays, spend most of your time doing administration and the rest of your time setting up your meetings for next week to follow up, because you can't do all of it on the fly. You have to really start planning this out. Um, so that's why I say to every major donor or major gift officer, if that's your primary responsibility, you can only maintain relationships with about 100 people. You cannot get much larger than that. Really, it's only 75, but you can't build a relationship other than that. So just think this through. Prioritize your stewardship and your check-ins to make sure that people are on the same page. It's really, really crucial if you have success in an area that you're sharing that success across the board so that everybody understands it. And when I say understands it, not just say, well, I sent that out in an email, because the chances are good that people don't read through all the details of the email, or even in your weekly meetings, if you have those, people don't always pay attention because other things are distracting them. So repeat it several times. Make sure people know what is happening, what's going on. Balance between donor relationships, internal collaboration, and your work time. Really, really important to have enough time to think through what it is that you're doing and what you're going to ask the donor to be a part of. People take that for granted, say, oh, that's easy. I don't need to prepare for that. I can do that. I can head to work, grab a cup of coffee and go do that. It's really not wise to do it that way. It's really wise to think it through and say, I talked to this donor. I understand what they're looking for, and I want to make sure that we can deliver on that. For example, going back to the illustration I gave you about this family that gave a $10 million gift, Vickie and I will both attest to this. It took a year in development on that. No, multiple years. I shouldn't say just 1 year. It took a long time to understand exactly what we're dealing with here, and how to cultivate that relationship in a way that's meaningful to them. Now, afterwards, it was successful, but we really did listen. It took a long time listening and planning and thinking through this to make sure that we had a good, solid approach that would inspire them. All right. And then, of course, use your tools. Use your calendars for collaboration. Make sure that you pay attention. None of us can really maintain all the information that we need to maintain. If we're in the business of doing this, we need to start creating like spreadsheets and things like that that will help us to just keep information that's public information. Maybe you have a birthday, for example, that you want to remember. Put that in your spreadsheet, or put it on your calendar on your desktop to make sure that it reminds you every year. Oh yeah, that's right. This person's birthday comes up every March, and so I want to make sure I thank them. They're very meaningful to our organization. Use the tools that you have available to you, because if you trust your brain, just your brain, you're going to lose it. You're not lose it. You're not going to lose your brain. What you'll do is it'll be hard to recall all the information that you need for this work. So make sure you're using the tools that you have. And if you don't have a donor database, it would be my advice to you to get one, so that if there's transitions with staff, the information that you've collected doesn't leave the organization. It stays with the organization. And then, of course, do it properly so you know how to age that data. For example, you don't want to enter into a database, for example, this person is 35 years old, because if you don't know how to age that, that person will stay 35 years old for the rest of their existence in that database. So you have to put in a date. You have to put in a very specific thing that knows how to age itself as it goes along. So those are just a few things to maintain this culture of philanthropy. The next slide, if you can advance that, Vickie. Or can I do that? Sorry.
I did. You should see
Oh, yeah, there
annual
we go.
planning.
Yeah, in your annual planning, the fundraising plans, and I feel your frustration when it comes to this, because I've been there. I've done this many, many times where you're told just go get the money, but you don't have those type of relationships. You don't have that kind of capacity yet. And so part of the way is look at your long-term donor value and really understand what that is, and then understand how many people you need to have a relationship with to achieve your goal. So it's not really easy to say, just go get the money. It's better to do the planning to say, hey, right now in our database, we have 500 names. We need to grow that to 1,000. And we need to do so in a meaningful way, not just grow it, not just add names in there. We need to build relationships with that many people. So how do we do that? What tools do we use to build that? Also, build in the training and recognition that are needed. This is a key part of this too, because donors give to opportunities. They don't just give to need. Let me say that again. Donors give to opportunity, not just to need. So early on, I was told simply, all you have to do when you're fundraising is talk about the numbers, how many people you serve, and talk about your needs. So every year when I was a young kid, a young man, excuse me, I would say, oh yeah, we serve, 6,000 kids every year, and we need $500,000 every year to make our budget. Well, when people add that up, it looks like either you're doing a really good job, or the gift opportunity isn't quite understandable to them. But the reality is we need to know our math on this. We need to know how much it takes us, to serve one of our clients. How much does it take to provide all the services that we desire, so that we have a good idea of how much we need to raise in that process, and how many relationships we need to build to do so. So just think through all the tools that you have, and be willing to take the training to really get those tools working effectively to build into the fundraising effort. This up here, schedule your reoccurring culture-focused check-ins. It really would be crucial for you to spend time listening to all the staff and what they're dealing with, so that you understand how it's going to impact the fundraising effort. So if you're in the healthcare field, for example, understand what is happening in that field, and how you can help improve it by engaging a donor in the process. So very, very important to not work in silos in your organization, but to really work together to understand this, and then hopefully they will be able to help you as well. Integrate your milestones into your calendar too. And then just make sure kind of milestones are really important in philanthropy for this one reason. It indicates to the donor that you have been here doing your work for a long time, and you know what you're doing. Donors don't like to give to speculative projects. They like to give to things that they know are going to work. And so even if you are new, look at your models. Where did you create your model from? Did you see another organization doing this? And then make sure you understand how their milestones have helped you form what you're doing with your mission. And I hope that makes sense, because it's really important. From my experience, donors really like to give to an organization that's thriving, not one that's a sinking ship. So if we keep this in mind too, you've probably been asked to do this. When you cry wolf, you can't do it that often. You can only do it a few times, and it better be something substantial that's causing this to happen. Otherwise, the donors will say, I'm not going to be an investor in that organization. It just doesn't make sense if it's struggling to survive, or if it's struggling to hit its milestones. So just pay close attention to all of those things and celebrate them. We have in our handouts the annual planning template. I really do like that. It's very detailed. It talks about how to use this for all kinds of donors, individuals, corporate donors, foundations, etc. And just think through that process and then plan that out carefully about how much will be raised in that. And then the other handout, the donor pipeline and stewardship tracker. Again, as I mentioned, this donor, well, it's a multi-family gift. And so we had a lot of work to do with all of those families together to get to that $10 million gift. But it came because of the fact we had a plan in place for making sure they were taking all the proper steps along the way. In other words, you couldn't have one family not know anything about the project and another family be so articulate that they could be a fundraiser. We need them all on the same page and moving together. So use those tools, if you don't mind, to really help you put together your plan on that. I'm going to turn that back over to Vickie, talk about the reporting tool on this.
Sure. Thank you, Brad. So as you are considering how you are reporting out for the progress, how is this culture of philanthropy going? Is it even worth our time and investment? There are a number of different reports that you all are probably already running. And for us, it is important, as we've mentioned in other instances already, to keep things simple to get started. Make sure that you aren't overreaching and creating complicated reporting. Start with what are the things that you as an organization have committed to do in establishing a culture of philanthropy, and let's make sure that you're checking in on it and reporting it back out to your staff and to your board to make the case for this investment in time and sometimes resources. This is a very, very simple sample dashboard of different data points that you may want to evaluate along the way. How much has been raised by your organization? What's the total number of gifts? The total number of donors? How many stewardship touch points have gone out? How many introductions has your board made? How many introductions have been made by staff? How many new donors have come as a result of those interactions? What's your donor retention rate look like? And what is your board's self-reported participation? Who on your board has said, yes, I wrote thank you notes, or I brought someone out for a tour, I invited someone to an event? These are all instances that we've been encouraging you to consider, how are you going to celebrate them? How are you going to recognize that there's more than just a financial way to support an organization? Again, this is a place to start, but we want it to be very simple so that it is achievable and you can build your own momentum along the way as you discover other things that you would like to report on and track. So, key takeaways from our conversation today. A culture of philanthropy does not mean that everyone asks for money. That's simply not what we are encouraging you to build through this activity. It means that everyone values donors. Donors are not put into a silo that only lives in the development team. Everyone across the organization values donors and what they are bringing to your mission. You tell the mission through impact stories and explain what does that investment actually mean and how is it changing the world. A culture of philanthropy helps to deepen relationships through shared ownership. I got that thank you note from the Stew Pot Alliance. That's someone else that is investing in my relationship with that organization. And a culture of philanthropy celebrates generosity and our shared values together. When we celebrate what board members are doing by inviting others into the organization, when we're celebrating what a team is doing to share impact stories, that all builds momentum so that we all feel that we are working towards the same mission and we all know what our role is and how we are supporting each other and how we feel supported from our team. We are coming up on the end of our time together today, but wanted to make sure that we left a little bit of time for any questions that you all might have. Our contact information is here on this final slide. Please feel free to reach out. Brad and I would love to hear from you. I've talked to many of you over the last few years with little questions that you've had after some time that we've spent together. And so I'm going to go ahead and end the slideshow and my screen share. And Carly, if there are any questions that maybe have come up throughout our presentation, we would be happy to answer any of those.
Yeah. So if anyone has questions for Vickie and Brad, feel free to put those in the chat. I haven't seen any come through yet, Vickie, but I did have a few questions for clarification that I might toss your way while others are thinking about follow-up questions they might have. Specific language that I saw you use a couple of times is a stewardship touch point. And I wondered if you could just say a little bit more about, like, I think it was on a slide that said stewardship touch point twice a year. I wondered if you could tell me a little bit more about what that means.
Yeah, so stewardship touch points are opportunities to interact with a donor where you are not asking them for a gift. I once, sorry if anyone's heard this story from me before, when I was working at Flight 93, I had someone call me because I was the frontline everything. I answered the phones, I did the emails, I did all of it. Someone called and said, well, you just think of, I only hear from you when I'm trying to make a gift. You just think of me as a checkbook. And that was mortifying to me. That is not the relationship that I wanted to have with that donor. So mortifying that I'm still telling it 20 years later. So stewardship touch points are meant to be those times that you're building up a relationship with a donor so that they do not feel that you only view them as an ATM or a checkbook. It's a time to reach out with their impact report, or if there is maybe you have a seasonal program that you're running and you're able to snap a couple of photos of all of the clients that are coming in to be part of that program, and you shoot a photo over to them to just say, hey, look at what's going on today. Or maybe there's a new partnership and there's a news article about that new partnership with another organization or government entity, something like that. It's just thinking about what would you want if you were them? And what would you want to hear from the organization that you've chosen to support? Very flexible. You can make it into anything that you want to make it into.
Yeah. And if I'm hearing you right, it seems like a chance to be creative too and think about what makes sense for the context of your work. Yeah.
It is. You can send a birthday card. You can send an anniversary card if it's the anniversary of their first gift to your organization. It absolutely is a place to flex your creative muscles.
Great. Thank you. Couple more questions have come in. Bethany asked, she said, looking at the donor pipeline tracker, I see the column of status that has stewardship, cultivation, and solicitation. And she said, curious about your definition of those and if those are the only status marks you use.
So that is, for the most part, those are the marks that we use. Now, of course, if it's a brand new donor, you're going to have a couple of different ones that once you've gotten through, for example, if we're starting with someone brand new, we would have identification and we would have research. So once you've received your first gift from a donor and you're in that stewardship phase with them, stewardship, cultivation, and solicitation are the main ones that you're going to be in constantly, over and over again. Stewardship means they've made their gift, and all you're trying to do is maintain a really good relationship with them. So you're touching base, you're sending an article, giving them their impact report. When it gets time to ask them for their next gift, that's when they move into cultivation. That's when your communication to them changes a little bit, and it's focused on what is the next commitment that you're interested in making to our organization, and what information do we need to give you to get there. And then solicitation is the actual ask itself. Sometimes your donor is in that solicitation phase for the duration of a meeting and they're ready to make their gift. Sometimes they need time to receive a proposal from you and to talk to their family, maybe recommend a gift from their donor advised fund. And so they're in that solicitation phase for a little bit longer. But that's the difference between those three.
Yeah, thank you. I had another kind of question for clarification, and I don't know if this is a question for you, Vickie, or for Brad. I wondered if you could say more about what a culture-focused check-in should look like as it relates to donor development. If there's kind of typical questions that come to mind, or how you think about the goal I think you described it as a culture-focused check-in. I think with like internal program team to get a sense of, I think the donor development strategies.
Mm-hmm. Brad, do you want to?
Yeah, I
tackle that one?
have a really good illustration of that too. Oftentimes what happens, you set up a goal for a campaign or for a project, and you're working over here to raise those funds, but then the staff that are implementing those projects don't understand that the reason why we're doing so is because of the fact that the teams that are raising the funds are helping provide the resources for this. And this is a great example of what's happening in Western Kansas. It's a combination of making sure all the people that are stakeholders invested in this are paying attention to these details. I got very excited for this campaign that we're working with Sunflower and with the Kansas Food Bank on to improve health conditions in Western Kansas. And so when Sunflower released that report that it's working, that healthy meals are being provided to people in Western Kansas, it's improving their health conditions. Well, that's something that I brought back to our staff. And I said, I got to share this with the whole team. Our whole staff needs to know this, because if this just lives over here, that we celebrate this with a handful of people, we celebrate the fundraising with another handful of people, and nobody understands how it all works together, it's really a detriment to the organization's fundraising overall.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Just make sure that people know, and especially in healthcare, because sometimes those gains are not like huge gains; they're small gains, but they're so important. And so, if you're in that field, really pay attention to what's happening, so that people understand this is the outcome that we're looking for, and then help the rest of the team celebrate that with you. So,
yeah. Well, we're coming up on time, so I'm going to ask one more rapid fire question that I think it would be great actually if both of you could give like your one idea starting point, and it kind of is building on the question that Kathleen asks in the chat. Kathleen says, we are grant funded and have no donors. How do we start to make connections? And that was kind of where my head was at, was, wow, this was a lot of great information. If you have no experience building a culture of philanthropy, or you're all or primarily grant funded, what is the one place you would start?
I'll give a first answer if I could. Every one of you give a gift to your organization. Start there. Become a donor. Understand what it means to donate to your organization. And you might push back and say, Brad, I don't make that much money. It doesn't matter how much. Just make sure you are a donor. Start there, because that's how you start then spreading the word, and you'll feel the joy of doing it, and you'll start spreading that joy. But you have to become one of those people. You have to be a generous person. And so start there.
Vickie?
I agree. We always talk about it as a gift that is meaningful to you. A gift that's meaningful to me is very different than a gift that is meaningful to the family that Brad's been bringing up as an example over and over again. Spoiler alert to everybody, I am not able to make a $10 million gift to anyone, but I am able to make a gift that is meaningful to me to the stew pot. So that's how we often talk about that, to be respectful that we are all bringing something different to the table, whether we're staff or volunteers or board members. I would also encourage you all, if you're just trying to figure out where to get started, host some of those events. Make your organization accessible to your community. No ask involved. Open up your doors, welcome them in, tell them what your mission is and what you are doing every day and how it is changing lives and or the world, and give them a menu of opportunities of how they can continue a conversation with your organization. That is what I feel is a very reasonable way to bring people in and to not be so focused on a one-on-one conversation. You can bring, a whole group in at the same time.
Great. All right, everyone. We are at and past time. I am going to quickly share this slide again so you can see the upcoming topics. We're going to keep this conversation going. I know there's more questions in the chat that we didn't have time to get to, but we'll continue in this format throughout, a combination of really rich presentation content and questions and answers. Again, this is all we have time for today, but if you would please join me in thanking Brad and Vickie for joining us. And again, thank you all for taking the time to share your lunch with us, and we will see you next time.